Hello everyone, I'm Marc, I'm the host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and this is Channel Chat Live with the lovely people from Softcat. We've got Graeme Watt, we've got Colin Brown, and we've got Rhys Lawson in the virtual studio. How are we doing, guys?
Really good, thanks.
Yeah, all good. Brilliant, thank you.
Giving us a big build-up in the run-up to the podcast, so I hope we live up to the billing.
Well, obviously Frank and George were very excited, so they'll be looking at this recording, see if you three have actually stood up to the test, and that'll be good. I'll actually give them a recording of that tonight. They can watch that. Obviously, first question, I wanted to come to Colin first of all with this. Obviously, everyone's been in the same crisis for, 5 or 6 weeks now, and I've been speaking to, I must have spoken to sort of 50 or 60 CEOs of companies now around the daily podcast, and there's obviously different challenges. What I am seeing, though, is record months. March was a record month for a lot of partners. April was a record month for a lot of partners. So to you, Colin, what challenges, though, have you faced for Softcat as a result of sort of COVID-19?
Yeah, thanks, Marc. Yeah, interesting times, crazy times. And in terms of how long this has been going on for, I did a little count earlier, and today is 8 weeks exactly since I went into lockdown, work from home. So yeah, 8 weeks is a long old time for this, isn't it? Yeah. The challenges have been multiple. If I'd probably split it into the kind of the business challenges, the leadership challenges, about our people as well, and then maybe talk about, you mentioned a few record months there, things like that, so we can have a little bit of a chat about that. But so the first big challenge for us, the same as it was for a lot of our customers, was actually being able to transition into a work from home environment, because Softcat is known for its office culture. Clearly we do have or have had before this crisis people working from home, either a day a week, a couple of days a week or something, but largely we're an office-based company, and we believe a lot of our success is from the culture and having people in the offices. So moving from that to 100% of people working from home within a few days, it was quite a challenge for us. And but once we could really empathize with our customers as to what they were going through as well, and our IT team, worked harder than ever to make that possible. And I should give them a shout out. The IT team did an absolutely brilliant job with that, as did the HR team, making sure we had all the right information with people's addresses to send stuff to and things like that. So there was that challenge, and within that, again, we could empathise with the customers, because one of the things that we had to do was fire up and get a lot of laptops, because we just didn't have that stuff knocking around. So we bought some, we rented some for the short term as well. So we were able to see what sort of challenges that our customers was having about availability, and that availability story changed a lot. But we got through that. We got everybody working from home. We did a lot of tests to make sure that all the connectivity was right. A lot of WebEx and Microsoft Teams calls in the first few days. And if you recall back to that time, which seems like centuries ago, but it's only a couple of months ago, both WebEx and Teams were having a bit of a problems because of the sudden surge in bandwidth and sort of scaling up to that. But got through the first few days of that, and then a week in, we were like, yeah, we can communicate. So it was more about then, how do we as a company, and for Graeme and myself and the rest of our leadership team, how do we make sure that we manage the team in this new remote way of working, because that's so different for Softcat. And that was, I would say, to a large degree, that's about focusing on what you're good at. I think this environment changes things. There's certain nuances, but what works. If you're an experienced and reliable and capable leader, what works for you. And now isn't the time to suddenly change your style or do things differently. And so we've just focused on what we at Softcat are good at, which is great communication, lots of transparency with our staff, keeping them involved all the way. As an example of that, as well as a couple of early senior management calls that we held, Graeme and I together did a kind of virtual office roadshow of all 9 of our offices, where we went around and we kind of gave them an update and gave them an opportunity for Q&A as well. So that was something that took a lot of time, but we both got a lot out of it. And we were comparing notes afterwards and saying that, this has been a real big crank up in the communications, but it hasn't felt like a chore. It's actually been really useful. And bizarrely, like a lot of these things, the contradictions that you get within working from home, we're restricted from doing a lot of things, but it's actually forcing us into doing a lot more things, getting us closer to our staff in real kinds of ways. So the leadership thing, the communication thing has been really important. And in terms of business, as you say, it's kind of been crazy. The first 4 or 5 weeks, we had our corporate customers all going crazy, getting equipped for work from home. In March, our laptop business, the revenue from our laptops was up 84%. In April, it was around 50%. AV was over 100%. Collaboration and VC stuff was up about 250%. Not everything was up at this level, by the way, just to be clear on that. But yeah, that massive big surge, which was, again, a challenge and a test for us. But it's been interesting. We've just finished our Q3 at the end of April, and we haven't released any results on that. And as a PLC, I'm not going to say anything more than that. But we're pleasantly surprised with how well we've done from Q3, and moving into Q4 towards the end of our year, we've got some more challenges, but I'm confident that the team will be able to step up to that. But it's been an interesting time, a test in many ways. But I'm pleased that Softcat's culture, Softcat's working together, Softcat's attitude has got us to where we are now, which is, notwithstanding all the human impacts, which are absolutely dreadful, of course, we're actually quite pleased with where we've got to at the end of this period of time.
Yeah.
Marc, I was just going to say, if I could just jump in to add on to that, apart from all those things, I do think there's probably 2 real positives that hopefully, you guys can relate to, and also the people that are listening. But things like work-life balance, Softcat push that a lot anyway. But from a personal experience, being able to go out for walks with the kids and tuck them in at night, and they are things which I do think there are some positives to the situation. And when we do come out of this new normal, it would be great to kind of maintain that. And then the second point, and this is sort of something that I've seen within Softcat, is and I was listening to a call yesterday with one of our head of corporate sales, Adam Fraser, and he was talking about how sales meetings, which are normally focused on sales, and obviously customers still need us, and that's our primary point of action, but the calls have now become a lot more personable. So actually knowing your team better, knowing your people better, and I just think that's a wonderful trait. And when we do come out of this, for the organisations, departments, and teams that are doing that properly, I think that's a really good platform to move into that future.
Yeah, sticking with you, Rhys, there on that for a minute. What's been the response from the team? And what I mean by that is, these people have been forced to work from home. They haven't got no choice. They might not have been used to working from home already, and they might have been, that might be their first or second job, etc. What's been the response from your team of actually trying to adapt to home working themselves?
Yes, and like Colin said before, the agility on how IT or Softcat's IT reacted to enable us, that was the first thing, and the speed at which the IT team did. But that's probably similar to most organisations out there, if not all of them. But for me, there were probably 4 main things that really eased that and have helped that. Colin already alluded to it, communication. Communication's already massively great within Softcat, but for something that's forever a moving target, and Colin did a management meeting this morning, and you don't know what's going to happen, but how can we keep adapting and evolving? So communication. Second one is health and well-being. That's always, again, been quite important for Softcat, but it's become even more prevalent. Goes back to that knowing your team, knowing your individuals within the team. And by doing so, you do know those individuals that maybe have moved to one of our cities and they're new into the sales job and they are living in a flat and they don't have a garden. So by knowing your individuals, it's been able to just support them and help them. And then the last one is probably this culture. And you're probably going to allude to it later on, but how we maintain that magic culture that Softcat talks about all the time. But there's been pop-up groups like we've got this work from home group, which have been there to focus on initiatives and activities all around driving that and maintaining that culture, which has been a real positive thing, at the same time as looking after the customers, which has to be first and foremost the most important thing.
Yeah, I was going to actually say on that on culture, because most partners out there will be very envious of your culture. It's well documented that you've got a great culture, and you attract a lot of talent through that. How have you maintained it? How have you maintained it when you haven't got those close-knit teams in the office and you haven't got all the incentives that you're doing, etc.? How have you maintained it? So maybe if I came to Graeme, you first on that, how have you maintained the culture?
It's been very much, as the guys have both said, it's been very much keeping those lines of communication open. It's been staying connected to the workforce. I think one of the things that we've been able to lean on very heavily, there's quite a few elements of the business that give us kind of resilience, not immunity, but resilience at these times in terms of some of the business challenges we've got. And the fact that we've got a strong culture in place already, and many of the features that Rhys just went through there, means we just lean on them even more. So actually remote working, whilst it puts some challenges on the culture, it actually brings that culture to bear more than ever before. And, you know, we've talked before, Marc, about our ability to stay positive, our ability to take ownership for things, our ability and willingness to support each other, to support our customers. And these have all become part and parcel of the fabric of the company. So I don't think the culture in the short term time that we've been remote in the 8 weeks, as Colin mentioned, has suffered. It's really been, you know, brought to bear much more than before. And it's really given us, you know, part of that resilience we've got. I think over time, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later on the call, over time, I think, you know, working from remotely does begin to have perhaps a negative or a dilutory effect on culture. We can talk about that later. But I think for now, you know, 8 weeks in, the culture is really coming to bear as something that's been super important to us in the past, in the good times, if you like, and now is becoming even more important, something we lean on, you know, in the COVID times as well.
And we've done, just to add to that, Marc, we've done, I mean, all organizations are doing this, but we've really filled our boots with doing baker's bingo, big quizzes. We had a big night in competition where everybody in the company voted for what was their favorite takeaway, what drink would they have with it, what sort of music would they have with it. And then ultimately at the end of that, it was, and which of the directors, whose house do you want to have your takeaway in? So the person who came out on top of that actually gets to have curry with lager, listening to cheesy pop tunes at my house with a takeaway, and we're doing that after lock-in. So just loads of bits and pieces like that. And as I say, you know, we're not alone in that. We're not unique in that, but the Softcat guys really throwing the weight behind that and just having a lot of fun and doing what we can to make fun while we're stuck in our houses.
No, absolutely. In terms of your sales interactions with your team, now maybe I'll come to Rhys with this. Obviously, most people now are happy on video. They're happy on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, etc., or 8x8 or whatever it is. Has your teams now adopted that as their go-to sort of preference to actually speak to their customers, or are they still just actually making phone calls and actually trying to get them over the phone?
I definitely think you've proven that these technologies work. And I think if you think about collaborative tools, half of the problem was proving, you know, that VC is much more efficient and productive, where you can just be as productive and efficient as a face-to-face in some instance. And, you know, talking about Graeme's point before about the working from home, you know, I'm not necessarily saying that we go into this way, but I think that if we can take our learnings from this period, and actually then when we do go back to the new normal or whatever that terminology is, if we can start to enhance that that use of the workforce and the workplace by using, you know, instead of sending so many emails, instead of voice calls with customers, we can use these technologies. Hopefully that can then, you know, bring the best of both worlds together. But yeah, the adoption of these technologies, how people have adapted to them has been brilliant, and also customers as well.
Yeah. Graeme, have you got anything to add to that? So sort of, you know, interactions on sort of the leadership teams and obviously, you know, CXO level across your other customers?
I think it's been really good. I think the whole industry has responded really well, frankly, Marc. We've talked about the agility of our own people and how we managed to move to remote working. I think the whole industry has. The suppliers have been enormously supportive. They've done various things like free training, accelerated access to MDF, payment supports for us and our customers, first dollar rebates, a number of initiatives. So that's kind of really worked well. I've had conversations which I've really enjoyed with Antonio Neri, CEO of HPE, with Enrique Lores, CEO HP Inc., Joyce Mullins, who runs the global channels for Dell. They've all reached out, to use that American expression. And whilst we haven't been able to solve the CV-19 pandemic, we have been able to talk about business, share experiences, and it's just nice to know they're there for you and that the partnership is strong enough to be able to just have those conversations. So I think the industry's pulled together remarkably well. And in fact, one thing I'm thinking about is maybe replicating that with some of the customers that I know particularly well, and Colin and others, and kind of reach out a little bit more to our customers and just make sure that they know they're there for us, for them, that we're there for them, and we're happy to support in any way we can. I think this is a great, looking at the positives, the way people have kind of collaborated and supported each other within companies and across the industry has just been fantastic.
I think picking up on the original question and adding to what Rhys said, I'm not sure if using VC, Zoom, Teams, 8x8, whatever, will become our salespeople's preferred approach. In fact, I don't think it will be the preferred approach. You want to sit down and have a chat, whether it's a coffee or a beer, whatever. But one thing that this has given them, actually, it's been good training for them, because it gives them a lot more confidence in how to have conversations with people who are hard to get. So you can get a meeting quickly. Last week, I was on a Teams call with some of one of our sales teams with a customer. A couple of the customers were in Bristol, and actually their CIO was in Australia. And I think before, a lot of our people are a little bit timid about trying to engage in this medium, whereas now it's just been a massive crash course in learning for how to be effective and good and get your point across. And we've actually trained our people in that as well. So we've had effective, how to be effective and how to get your personality across and how to get your normal effectiveness across, albeit from a distance. So yeah, I think that, again, that's one of the unforetold upsides, is that we've just got better at this stuff as well.
Yeah, do you know as well? What I've been hearing a lot from the partner community as well is they're almost going to use video as like a pre-qualification before they go on the visit. So instead of, I'm traveling up to London, I've got an agenda with a customer, it's a new business inquiry, I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I'm just going to go and take a punt and have a go. Actually getting them on a platform like this and sort of saying, look, before I come up there, is this going to be an opportunity we can actually work with together? And almost like a pre-qualified of the opportunity, rather than just sort of, making an appointment on a phone call and actually just taking a punt on it and going up to the meeting. This to me is an actual great opportunity now to sort of say, yes, you can meet face to face and have the interaction, but you can also pre-qualify the meeting and almost say, look, obviously the best place is to meet face to face, but we don't want to waste each other's time anyway. Let's have a quick, Zoom meeting for 15 minutes and see if there's any synergy between the two companies. So I am seeing a lot of feedback from that. I don't know if Rhys, if you're seeing any feedback from your customers. Obviously, I know they can't see them face to face at the moment, but has there been any resistance to getting on Zoom meetings like this, or have they been sort of defaults of the phone calls?
No, I can't disagree with anything you've just said. I think it's, to my earlier point, you've proven that this type of technology works. You can be just as productive and efficient. I think that a lot of organisations probably didn't have a proper defined strategy on collaboration and collaborative tools. Yeah. So like we have, we've started to use MS Teams a little bit more, and many of the different tools to find which one suits us. And I think a lot of organisations have done the same and embraced that technology.
So Graeme, coming to you, let's talk. Hopefully, when we get out of COVID, so post-COVID, what learnings will Softcat now adopt post-COVID when we get out of this crisis?
Well, I think the big question, and the really difficult question that everybody will be asking themselves, is to what extent has remote working, or should remote working become part of our go-forward environment? I think that's what everybody wants to know. So actually, in the first instance, what everybody wants to know is, what does that return to the workplace look like? And we obviously need to rely on government guidelines and how fit for purposes our offices are for distancing and all the rest of it. But in the kind of more medium term, I think, it's been said several times already, the technology is proven for remote working. So actually, in our business today, remote working isn't so much the challenge, it's how COVID-19 is going to impact our customers and the demand from customers. Having said that, the good news for our industry is that, like, the world has been exposed to remote working and the tools and the technology that supports it, and everybody's can now see it's a different way of working, but it does actually work. So I think in the midterm and the long term, I think there's a boost here for our industry in terms of supporting that sort of distributed computing, if you like. What's right for Softcat will be difficult to say. So in the short term, I think we need to plan very carefully and make sure that, as I said, follow government guidelines and allow people to make their own choices. I think in the midterm, when we are fully back to your question and fully past COVID, I think it'll depend, every business will have to make its decision. It'll depend what type of business you're in. It'll depend, certain roles within certain businesses may be suitable, more suitable than others. Certain tasks within a person's week or a work day may be more applicable. And so, and the individual circumstances will come more and more into play. I think something that the COVID-19 pandemic has done is it's made people think about people a lot more, which I think is super important. So individual circumstances will be in the mix as well. For us, we're a strong sales culture, as you know, a strong sales organization. We've got a strong culture, and those are very important to us, and they're very important to our customers and our partners as well. So we'll be very thoughtful about anything that will negatively impact those two qualities. So it's not an either or. And I think the other big thing that I think we're all learning in this situation is we're learning to trust each other. We have to trust leadership. We have to trust our teams. There's no big brother in the office. I'm not saying it was like this before, but there's not the ability to watch and see and drive productivity is much less. So that whole trust piece we've got to lean on that. We've had to lean on that. We'll continue to lean on that in the future. So I think I do think though that with a sales focus like we have and with a strong culture we have, then there's a lot to be gained by being together for significant periods of time. I think harnessing that energy, people learning and collaborating through their experiences with each other, the kind of training and stuff that we do on top of all that, I think, we need to retain some of that. But so if you ask me, do I think we're going to go fully remote? I've heard of companies saying actually fully remote is going to be our preferred option, and actually working in the office is our exceptional cases. People are sort of moving their mindset that way. I don't think that'll be the case for us. But if you ask me, do I think we'll move to a more flexible, higher degree of remote working? Probably. Do I think it'll go heavily remote? Probably not. So those are some of the things on my mind. The other thing that's on my mind, and I don't have any answers or guidance to give you or any of the listeners here, but is as different customers go through that decision-making process and think about how they're going to operate, how do we organize ourselves to operate differently with different customers depending on how they've chosen to, work going forwards themselves? So that's going to be quite an interesting one for us to kind of sort through as well.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about sort of trusting your employees, and maybe I could come to Rhys with this one. Is it easier to trust the employees because there's no distractions now? They can't go down the pub on Friday. They can't go to the cinema Wednesday afternoon, etc., etc. Do you think do you think when these restrictions are lifted and there's lots more distractions out there and everyone wants to suddenly work from home, maybe productivity won't be as, they won't be as high as it maybe could be?
I think there's plenty of distractions. I mean, I've had to get my 3 children out before this course. They don't come in and throw something or shout and scream. And I think that's probably related. We've all been on a call with a customer and had to apologise. And actually, I was talking at one time with Richard Gwyn-Griffith yesterday. And actually, it's the acceptance of that is okay now. But I guess to answer your question, I think we're all pretty desperate. I think we've probably gone the other way. We've all got a bit of cabin fever. I can't wait to get back into the office to have that human interaction, and especially from a Softcat perspective, it's just magic for that office environment. So yeah, the trust is always going to be there, and the individuals that like to work in the office, the individuals that can be trusted, and that was probably in place before this COVID-19 thing happened.
Okay, great. Let's move on to a subject that's come to the forefront now: sustainability. So the lockdown has obviously forced the channel or the world to become more sustainable. How can we ensure elements of this are carried sort of forward post lockdown? Maybe if I come to Colin for that.
Yeah, it's a big topic, obviously, isn't it? And coincidentally, or just as luck would have it, we actually had sustainability on the agenda of our weekly directors meeting this Monday, because it's something that we're focused on in a number of ways. One is just in terms of setting ourselves some goals and some targets as to when we can be net neutral, net carbon neutral, things like that, which customers are interested in, vendors are all talking about. So that's clearly something as a PLC you'd expect to be in our agenda. But equally, it's a big cost to the business as well. You know, excessive travel, use of cars, trains, etc., planes, which we all know is not cheap. And I imagine the prices are going to be even more expensive after all of this, as a lot of those organisations try and recoup a lot of lost profitability. So yeah, it's massively on our agenda, and I think it ties in with what we've been talking about before, which is that why drive up 3 hours up the motorway to meet a customer for a 45-minute discussion and drive 3 hours back? A, that's a productivity fail because you've probably spent a whole day for a 1 hour meeting, and B, it's a really expensive thing to do, so it doesn't benefit anybody. So it's already something that's on our agenda as to how we can reduce ineffective travel and make better time for ourselves. And as well as that, as I say, it's massively on the agenda in terms of what can we do, how can we contribute to our bits of the agenda. And we've been through those discussions that kind of said, well, if we do this, we're only making a tiny difference. But I think you always have to remember, if everybody makes a tiny difference, that all adds up to a huge difference. So we are massively focused, and probably within the next month, 2 months, we'll kind of be ready to go openly in public about what our goals are in terms of that carbon net neutral timelines and things like that. So yeah, it's really important, and as you say, this last kind of 2 months has enabled us to focus in on what is feasible, because I think before this we were all been saying, yeah, I'm a bit cynical about that, I'm not sure if it's really as good to do that or as good to do that, but now we can see it does work. So this has kind of really been quite helpful in terms of a dry run, if you like, in terms of what you can achieve without travel, without that additional expense. And the other thing that you can't help but take notice of worldwide over the last couple of months is we've all seen it on TV, on the news, on websites, what a huge reduction in pollution there has been all over the world. You know, you see that particularly in places like India. I think we've all seen those videos. You know, there's parts of the world where people can now see mountain ranges in the distance that they've never been able to see from their village before, and that's because all that pollution has just gone. So if that doesn't make us wake up a little bit and want to do something about that, then nothing ever will. Yeah,
and staying with you, Colin, for a minute, the channel has really risen to the challenge here over the last 2 months. There's no doubt about that. You know, there's been some real unsung heroes in the channel, I think. You know, I know the NHS have done a fantastic job, but the channel keeping business going, I think, has done an amazing job. So there is an opportunity in the market now. So where do you see the opportunity right now for the channel and Softcat moving forward, maybe the next 3 months?
Yeah, I think the opportunity, and what we as a channel generally, you know, particularly if you think about the reseller community, I think what we've got to do now is make sure that we're there for our customers. So customers, I think, have gone through, I think there's been a few stages that organizations have gone through, including us, which is the respond stage. It's the, oh my God, we better do something about this. So you got to respond, done that, and then you get, after that first few weeks, it's reflect, you know, look back and what have we done and what do we still have to do? And, you know, you look at, well, we've implemented all of this, but is it secure? Is it secure enough? Do we have to put on an additional layer of that? So, you know, there's respond, reflect, and now I think we're at that reevaluate and potentially reprioritize. So we're into the point where IT departments are saying, right, we can't do nothing. We've got to get on with stuff. We had this stuff on our agenda before COVID-19 came for good reason. So there's a lot of these things that we need to get on with doing now that we're all settled into a good way of working. And I think Softcat's role there and the channel's role there is to help advise and guide customers as to how to do that. And as ever, I would say this, I think the benefit the channel has over vendors is giving them that sort of agnostic and vendor independent view as to what's capable. And particularly at the minute, in the next few months, it's also great for us to be able to say, well, we can offer you choices because availability of one product may be poor. There's another equivalent product that we can advise and guide you on and make sure that we can get that to you in a much shorter time frame. So I think it's that begin with the end in mind with our customers. Where do we want to get them to? And they may have re-evaluated that and reprioritized that. So we'll help them with that. We can tap into that supply information. We can actually add expertise as well, because the channel generally, and certainly Softcat has got access to a lot of third-party expertise as well. We have our own services organization with about 350 people, but we've got up to about 100 service partners that we use and we can tap into. So getting that information into partners as well, and generally just being there for them and for them to bounce ideas off and ask us questions about what we're doing, what we're seeing in the marketplace. And as Graeme mentioned earlier, I've actually had a couple of calls with customers who've been asking me that. It says, what are your other customers doing, or how are they responding to this, and how can we step up to it? So I think it's a massive opportunity for us. And one thing, again, a bit like the sustainability and the green agenda will be heightened and enhanced by this. I think customers have gone through such a mini revolution in the last couple of months that digital transformation opportunity will just get even further. If you're in retail, we knew we had to get into e-commerce, or we already were in e-commerce, but that omni-channel approach will be slanted much more in terms of e-commerce than in terms of high street, etc. So this, if anything, has just enhanced and exacerbated that rush towards digital transformation. AI will come into it as well. So the whole anticipating buying information from customers. I think there's just some fantastic opportunities for the channel, and it's a great place to be when this happens.
Yeah, and there's a question from one of the listeners, which I think is going to be apt now about this point, and I'll put it to the whole of the panel, but maybe I'll come to Graeme first. So it's from Dave Williams. What does the Softcat team feel are the biggest challenges and risks in terms of security and data protection facing the IT managers as we head into what will be a new normal and potential much more remote workforce and mobile workforce across the many enterprises? So Graeme, what do you think about that?
Well, I think the question's spot on. I think what we've seen, and Colin alluded to it as well, I think what we've seen is we've seen people put remote working fixes in place very quickly. We've seen them do it sometimes by renting equipment, as indeed we did at Softcat. And I think one of the things that's potentially been compromised in that quick fix environment is the security of that remote working. It's either partially or entirely new for most organizations. And I think what we'll see in the short term is that we'll see organizations review their remote working and their infrastructure that supports it, and they'll take steps to make it more permanent. That's something we'll be doing at Softcat. We'll make sure that we can work. Our business continuity plans might have envisaged an office going down for some reason somewhere in the UK. It never quite envisaged that all of the offices would be down simultaneously, and I think many people were in that same boat. So getting a more permanent infrastructure in place around the workspace, getting it fully and properly secured, I think will be very important. So I think that'll be a big focus for us in the short term for sure, and helping our customers achieve that.
I think just to add on top of that, Marc, if I may, Colin's alluded to, but we have the ability to be very agnostic on our solutions from all of our IT priorities, and I think that a lot of the sales teams especially have seen we've absolutely doubled down on listening to them. That a lot of these softwares and solutions have been pushed to an absolute maximum, so they are the best people for us to take this time to make sure we're sitting and we're listening, we're learning from those strong relationships, the partnerships that we have as an organisation, and then in turn starting to communicate out to the salespeople, ready for what this new normal looks like. But it's forever moving target, and we don't know what this is going to look like, so we can only kind of keep going and going and going as fast as we can.
Colin, have you got anything to add around that?
And only just to pick up what the question was asking about GDPR. I mean, that is an interesting one, and I don't have an answer to that, but it is interesting because we have, we've been, if I think about what Softcat's been doing, we've been trying to make sure that we're looking after every single one of our employees, and we have to have access to be able to get hold of them, but we have to ask them to give us the mobile numbers. It's up to them as to whether or not they want to give us their personal mobile number. And I know, I think it was in one of your chats a couple of weeks ago, Marc, when you were talking to Nobby at Computer Centre, and he was saying about, we're sending IT equipment to your employees' home addresses. You have to tell us we're allowed to do that, because we shouldn't be allowed to do that under normal circumstances. So I think it's kind of raised a lot of questions as to some of the flex or some of the grey areas around GDPR, and when it's suitable to sort of ease that or relax that a little bit. Or then once we have that information, what do we do about making sure that we destroy that permanently and we don't retain that information? So it's cranked that up a little bit, and I know our legal counsel has been focused hold on that and making sure that anything we do that would normally be thought as being, you know, slightly outside of GDPR is to make sure that we're covered for that, that the customers are covered for that, and that we take the right processes and right actions afterwards to make sure that we are subsequently GDPR compliant.
Yeah, I remember when I spoke to Mike about that, and he actually said to me, yeah, 2,000 laptops are going out to 2,000 different addresses, and I was like, oh my god,
Yeah,
you know, what do you do with that information afterwards? To be honest with you, I didn't even think about GDPR. I was just thinking, God, what a logistics problem that is, you know, getting those couriers out or whatever it was. But yeah, it's something obviously that's got to be a consideration. Yeah. Let's move on. If I come to you, Rhys, obviously this is a time where communities are coming together. People are obviously, I don't know about you, but people are much kinder at the moment, I think, and really want to help each other, which I think is great. I think if that continues post-COVID, that's going to be a good thing for customers. But sort of Softcat's work in the community, obviously you've got an initiative like Love to Volunteer. So maybe, Rhys, if you could give us an idea of what's going on with that.
Yeah, of course. It's probably worth just expanding on how we got to Love to Volunteer and how long it's been going. So as you know, Softcat have always raised a huge amount of money each year. I think it's probably around £500,000 per year, isn't it? Colin or Graeme can correct me if that's wrong. But something Martin introduced just before he left was actually 2 days of volunteering to be used by staff. And for whatever reasons, the adoption or uptake of that wasn't as probably we liked. So we decided to, first of all, understand why this wasn't happening. And the first thing was, the important part is, it's not because people didn't want to. And we come to the understanding that it was simply because people didn't have the time to actually look for some of these volunteering opportunities. People found it difficult to find things that were actually suitable, or of the events that we did organise, they just didn't appeal to individuals. And that was probably quite a learning for me and the team. You know, an animal volunteering opportunity might not appeal to me, but it could be for someone else. So this Love to Volunteer initiative or campaign was a creation of small teams around the offices to make it a lot more easier, a lot more attractable, and then to hit those 3 key objectives. So just before COVID, we were, you know, it was absolutely flying and a tremendous amount of success. We'd probably hit around about 340% adoption increase. We obviously had to change massively because of COVID, and like you say, we were probably looking for the silver bullet, something which the organisation could get behind as a whole. And again, Colin and Graeme have been on plenty of calls with us where we just couldn't find it because the charity or charities were inundated with organisations, individuals wanting to help, which is wonderful. But what we then did is we probably split it into 2 phases. The first phase we started to push was supporting the Nhs Drive. So when Boris announced, you know, we want 450,000 users, you know, within a couple of hours we'd pushed that out. And one of the good things that, you know, Graeme, Colin and everyone did is, if you had utilised your 2 Love to Volunteer days, this period is kind of starting from scratch. So it wasn't stopping anyone getting involved, which I thought was a wonderful thing to do. We also supported Silverline, so elderly, vulnerable people started to get. But again, I think within 2 days they were absolutely swamped, not just by us, but many other organisations. And then probably the latest one is we've started to support in a phase 2, Re-engage, who are very similar to Silverline, and then just trying to sort of, again, double down onto local opportunities. So the local Love to Volunteer teams, how we are helping those individuals that do want to get involved in volunteering, either remotely or actually physically, and how we can help them with sort of local opportunities. And then the last one, just to kind of push onto that alongside, is we've done we called it a Tech for Good initiative, which I know is a phrase being used quite a bit, but really early on, I think we realised that, you know, that front line, that NHS was being focused on so much, but where could we go to? So we started to look at care homes, and we came up with a scheme to supply a number of care homes across the UK, all located around Softcat offices. The ability to have free tablets, all enabled with 4G Wi-Fi, because some of the stories we were getting back that some of these patients and vulnerable people were not having the ability to communicate with loved ones in unfortunately some of their last days, which really I think touched quite a number of us. So just being able to actually use what we're good at and what we sell to improve people's lives in a time like this, I think is quite a powerful thing. And so there's a lot, but we've tried to do it, and like Colin and Graeme said, it's a continuously moving target.
recently you have, and congratulations, by the way, you've reached number 5 in the best place to work 2020. Well done. What emphasis do you place on awards like that? I.e., you've got that award, or would you rather win the sort of the corporate reseller of the year at the CRN? Colin, if I come to you with that.
Well, we're a very competitive organisation, so we want to win everything, Mark. Absolutely everything. We want a clean sweep. But no, we know that that's not feasible, and we've got a lot of big, very strong, good competitors in the marketplace as well. So, we want to get recognised, but we're genuinely pleased to see some of our competitors getting recognised as well. But given that, and if you think about Softcat and what's behind our success, the thing that we talk about mostly is our culture, and phrase I use a lot. It's not my phrase, but I borrowed it consistently, is culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that's something that we live and breathe all day and every day within Softcat. And our principle is that we're a reseller, so all the products that our customers can buy from us, they can buy from anybody else. They can buy from hundreds of resellers up and down the country. So we have to ensure that our customers want to do business with Softcat. They enjoy doing business with Softcat. They generate real relationship with Softcat and rely on and value the advice that they get from Softcat. So customer satisfaction, customer service is right at the top of the agenda. However, and this is actually something I like saying to customers, customer satisfaction isn't our number one priority. Kind of customers sometimes look at me and go, isn't it? It really should be. The reason customer satisfaction isn't our number one priority is that you will only be able to deliver great levels of customer satisfaction if you have the highest levels of employee engagement, and you have really happy employees who love doing their job, who get a kick from doing their job. And if you have that, then you'll be able to provide that level of customer satisfaction. So given what I've said, is that we will not be successful, and we wouldn't have been successful if we didn't have the highest level of engagement with our employees. And therefore, if Softcat wasn't a great place to work, you probably got where I'm going to, is that's one of the most important accolades that we love to be recognised for, is our workplace, our culture, the fact that Softcat is a great place to work. That's why Rhys said earlier, some of us are desperate to get back to the office. We just like working at Softcat, so that recognition is fantastic. And we kind of think that if we get that right, then a Reseller of the Year award, or a Nutanix Reseller of the Year award, or a Dell or an HP, those are the things, those are actually outcomes and outputs of us being a great place to work. So that's the foundation. So that's the most important one for us.
Yeah, obviously one award that you can't win, Colin, is the best sales and marketing agency of the year at the Sales and Marketing Awards. I think definitely got that locked down. Otherwise, I'm rioting of that. So just to put that out there. But what was interesting, I actually said to Calum before we actually came on air, I said, did Softcat enter those sales and marketing awards? Because I didn't see you guys shortlisted in that. And I thought, if I come to you, Graeme, did you guys go into those? Or do you put emphasis on the actual CRM ones in November?
I'm not, well, we certainly put emphasis on the CRM ones in November. I can't actually recall whether we entered the sales and marketing ones.
Let me pick that up. Yeah. We didn't for a long time, Mark. We didn't until about 2 or 3 years ago. But we have started to. And we've seen some success in those because we're getting some recognition for our apprentice program, for example, for some specific sales campaigns. We've put a few entries in for that. For some marketing campaigns, clearly, as you say, our marketing won't be anywhere near as good as yours, but we've had some good recognition for some of our marketing. And marketing's actually been a big investment for us in the last couple of years, because we've gone from being a very low level, just keeping it ticking over. We've invested in a new team there, doing a lot more stuff digital. As I say, we can learn from you, but no, we're in those awards, and we've got some more entries. And what we find as well, by the way, about those is that not only is it good to get recognised within an award ceremony, if you like, on the day, but we actually find it really great recognition internally. So if we go inside Softcat and say, right, what's the best sales campaign we've done, or what was the best marketing campaign we've done, and we pick 1 or 2, and then we get the guys to tell us all about it, and they are so full of pride of just saying, brilliant, the management team here at Softcat want to recognise my sales campaign or my marketing campaign. So we always find that, even if we don't win anything, there's actually goodness to be had in just putting this stuff together. We can learn from it, and maybe we can repeat it, but also just giving that glow of recognition to our staff as well. So there's upsides everywhere you look. Yeah,
and I was going to actually say that to you, because in terms of actually attracting talent and retaining talent, do you think those awards are important? So I'll give an example. I got my two sons to look at your website, and they think it's great. They think these guys just have parties all the time. They don't work, but they're only 12. They're only 12 and 8. So I don't know if that's the right target market you're trying to get to, but 12 and 8-year-olds think you're fantastic. But if I came to Rhys with that, do these awards help retain good talent and attract talent to you?
I would say absolutely. I've always got this analogy when I explain it to family and friends. To me, in football terms, Softcat are the Barcelona. You don't ever say no to Softcat. But then once you get in, the continuously, like, the platform we give for development, personal growth, and stuff like that. I've never not enjoyed a day at Softcat, and I'm not getting paid. I guess I am getting paid to say that, but yeah, I'm being quite honest now.
Sake. I've never not enjoyed a never not enjoyed a day at Softcat. All right, Graeme, scrub that. Come on.
Marc,
go on, Rhys, carry on. Go on.
I don't know. Have you finished, Rhys?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to add to this piece, and also the comment that Colin made earlier on about culture, eating strategy for breakfast. I kind of think about this quite a lot, and I'd much rather have a really, really strong culture and a moderate strategy and perform excellently against that strategy than I would having a really, really strong strategy and only an average culture and having an average performance against that brilliant strategy. And I think that's borne out by the way we operate. And I think, just a couple of other comments there. It doesn't happen by accident. We put an enormous amount of time and energy and investment into our people. People are front and center of our thoughts every time we're talking about the business and taking a new direction or investing or whatever we're doing. And I think it's a really great legacy. It's the genius of Peter Kelly that kind of started it in the organization 27 years ago. Martin Hellawell carried it on brilliantly. I'm hoping to, continue to invest in it and take it on. But it's Colin, myself, Rhys, it's all of our responsibility and the rest of the team to keep it very, very, central to what we do. And it's, as Colin suggested earlier on, you go and talk to our customers, and it's the biggest single differentiator we've got in the marketplace in terms of people want to work with us, they enjoy working with us, they value the advice and the experience of working for us, and it's just so important.
So this is a question.
Sorry, Marc. Can I just sneak in there? Because I just had a quick question in regards to you're obviously infamous or famous for taking on entry level talent or taking on sort of more junior talent and molding them up through the business, getting them used to this culture. Staff engagement, employee engagement will obviously be the number one. How have you, all the intakes that you would have been due to take on during this period, how have you kept those employees engaged? Are they still going to be joining? What's sort of the strategy and the plan with all of those individuals?
For right now, do you mean?
Yeah, so for right now, obviously, I believe people who are meant to start in April or May are starting later in the year. But obviously, you go through a whole host of training and you invest a huge amount in getting everyone from all offices into Marlow to do that training. How are you working that in this current period of lockdown?
Yeah, we've pushed some people back to July as a step period, and actually it's really driven by the fact that we want people when they join Softcat to really enjoy the induction process, to really get a good feel for Softcat, the camaraderie, the teamwork, see it and live it in action for the first few weeks, the sort of 3 weeks that we've gone through that induction process, and that is that traditional induction process is clearly impossible now. Yeah, simple as that. We are taking some people on outside of that and just making sure that we do as best possible job we can with a remote induction, because those are roles that we need absolutely right now. We're we're really confident that we can continue throughout this period to attract great talent. In fact, actually, we kind of see there's probably a bit of an upside to this, because when you're getting into the summer and September, which is when the grad intakes normally start, it's certainly our assertion that a lot of organisations will be reducing, for cost-saving reasons, their graduate intake and apprentice intake. So I think we'll have probably access to a wider talent pool than we normally have, and we are known for this, as you say. So we actually get in front of a lot of good people anyway. But a lot of those people are also going to assessment centres for grad roles in KPMG or PwC or Microsoft or Cisco as well. And as I say, my assertion is that there'll be less of those around. So I think we've got great access to talent over the next 3 to 4 months. Our challenge is, as you say, to make sure that we continue to do as good a job as we possibly can in terms of onboarding them. But we're stepping up to that. We went, in the turn of a sixpence, we went from having assessment centres in our offices to doing remote assessment centres. So like anything else, this is the challenge that we all have to step up to and go, how do you switch into a virtual methodology for doing these things? So it'll be different. Some of it might actually improve as a result of it. Some of it may not be quite as good, but I'm really confident that we'll do a great job in that.
Great, thanks, Colin, for that. Maybe this one to Graeme. Throughout the channel, remote working or agile IT, whatever you want to call it, it wasn't ubiquitous throughout the channel. Most people were giving, there's a lot of partners that are giving home workers, but a lot of companies were saying in the office 100%, that's what we want in our culture. Will Softcat soften their sort of culture? Would they actually think, oh, actually we might do remote working more often now? Or will you think actually we want to get that culture back and actually get back into the offices?
No, I sort of touched on this before. I think it's a tough one. I think we will probably, when we haven't discussed this fully yet, but internally, but I think we will. What we've realised is that not everything we were doing before necessarily makes as much sense as we thought it did. And Colin alluded to some of the inefficiencies of travel. Whether that's traveling to see customers or suppliers, or whether it's just the daily commute. So I think there is a bunch of stuff that we were doing previously that doesn't make so much sense going forward. But having said that, it'll make, depending on what business you're in and what sort of roles you've got in the business, remote working being extended more permanently going forwards will make more sense in some roles and some companies than others. As a strongly graduate-based sales, company, as with that sales and that culture very much front and center of what we do, I think that for us to continue to operate remotely is probably not good for us long term in terms of keeping that culture alive and very central to what we do. Having said that, getting people to come into offices and do long commutes and for some of that time to have very little interaction with people around them on occasions doesn't make so much sense either. So I think there's a balance. So I think we will probably move to a little bit more flexible working and a little bit more remote working for specific roles, for specific tasks. But if you ask me, are we going to go to that other extreme that I talked about earlier on, where some people will think of working from home as the norm and working in the office as the exception, I think we're a million miles away from that. And we've got to keep going to see our customers as well. I mean, remote working is great to a point, but you lose the ability to bump into, if you're not going to a customer, you don't get to bump into other people in the customer that maybe you knew, maybe you don't know, get introduced to them. You don't get to see in meetings all those visual cues of whether the customer likes what you're saying or it dislikes what you're saying or is pretty ambivalent to it. There's a lot of visual cues that you miss, not just internally to the organization, but externally with customers. So I think there's very much a place for that. On top of which, it's interesting. Is there a huge demand to go back to work? I think depending on the office and the business and the culture, I think in Softcat there is a pretty significant demand. Having said that, I think people are going to be very cautious in the first instance about going back, because people will be concerned about, you know, do we have the right facilities in place for distancing, for cleansing, and all the rest of it. So it'll be a while before we get back to the new norm, but I think the new norm will embrace remote working further for us. Yeah.
The point I'd add to what Graeme has just said is, in the same way as I was saying earlier on about our customers, we want our customers to want to do business with us, not feel they have to. It's kind of the same thing in respect of our employees. They want to come to the office. They're not forced to come to the office. So if we create, and we believe we have created, and we'll continue to work hard on this, if we create a culture, a campus culture where people love coming to the office because it's fun, they see their friends, they learn, they develop, they mature. So there's something in it for them to come to the office, then they'll come to the office. If they come to the office because we're saying to them, you have to be there at 9 o'clock and you can't leave until 5 o'clock, and that's just the rules, then that's the wrong way to do it. And that's not the way we do it. We want to create that culture where people like being in the office and get something from being in the office. Yeah. It's not us getting something from it, it's them getting something from it.
And I think that's absolutely right, Colin. I think what we'll need to think harder about is making sure that we are giving people value by getting them into the office. They will make their own minds up, of course, but we've got to kind of think further about that as well. It was quite interesting. I was just off a call just prior to this one, and Cushman and Wakefield were talking about what that return to work might look like. There are commercial property companies, as I'm sure you're aware, and have been surveying a lot of their customers globally about, you know, how this thing pans out. And on their surveys to date, they said that of all the customers they've got, and I can't remember what number it was, but it was significant, only 1% of the customers said that they would like to return to working 5 days a week out of an office. So I think there are some quite substantial changes afoot here.
I was actually going to touch on that. Sorry, Marc, on the employee engagement sort of piece, because I remember when we were talking about 2 months ago and how so much has changed in that time, Graeme, but we were talking about how you made the decision to increase flexible working shortly after taking up the role of CEO. And you could support and actually see the results of that through the employee engagement surveys, etc., that you've done, and saw how popular and how good a decision that therefore was. Yeah. Have you noticed any? Are you still monitoring employee engagement through this time? Have you got any before and sort of after, or before and 8 weeks on employee engagement scores? And I'm just interested to know how that's changed.
We do a quarterly management survey, which has just gone out. We get the results back in a week or so's time, which is the sort of 200 or so people in management roles that are invited to come to a management meeting and also kind of give us feedback on how we're operating. So we've got that one to come. So we did have a little bit of a discussion. Should we continue with that right now, or does it make any sense? And we think, no, absolutely it makes sense. We need to continue to hear from our staff and how they think we're managing and leading the business. And then we also did a survey, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago now, to all staff, just trying to establish how they were feeling about working. Do they have the right tools to work at home? Do they have the right communication? Are they getting the right leadership? How are they feeling about it? How's their morale and motivation? And I think whilst the results were pretty good, I think we can reflect back and say that between what we've done as a company and how those individuals have managed themselves in the time, I think we've done a pretty good job. Having said that, there's, you know, some people have, bigger challenges than others. We have people living at home. We have single parents. We have people who have got caring responsibilities at home and trying to juggle that with their work responsibilities. So we've really tried to take those personal circumstances. You know, people have had, to a certain extent found it really frustrating. They've missed all the interaction we've just been talking about. So we've tried to help them as best we can. We've put buddy systems in line. Our managers are taking a very personal an individual approach to their teams. We've laid on some more mental health helpline, for example, extended access to that, to put in place whatever we can to help people. But generally speaking, that engagement and kind of the health of the company has been pretty good. But of course, there's some exceptions in there.
Guys, I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to just do one last question, and it's for each of you. So if you can give like a 30-second answer. this has been a time where a lot of companies would have looked at their processes and their inefficiencies of their companies and started to make changes. And obviously, when you're running a company, maybe you're not even conscious about looking at that. So if I come to Rhys first, and then maybe for Colin and Graeme to ask as a leadership team, but Rhys, as a manager, is there any sort of processes or inefficiencies that you've identified that you'll change now moving forward?
I think I sort of alluded to it before, is potentially the knowledge gap of what the new normal is going to look like. So I talked about, we've increased the amount of sessions with vendors and partners, and that's probably the only gap that I think we've realised on. Are we fully prepared for the conversations? How are we going to guide and support all the organisations that are going to need us, not only now, but then when we do come out of this? So that's probably the only thing that I think we've already started to highlight.
Okay, what about you, Graeme? Like 20 seconds. You're under pressure now.
I'm under pressure because I was trying to get off mute. Sorry about that. I think it's all the productivity around travel. I think it's what we talked about before. I think, do we need to commute as often as we do today? Do we need to spend such amount of time going to see customers and other partners to the extent we still need that interaction? The conferences, I think they're going to turn more and more virtual. I think there's a huge amount of productivity to be saved in that.
And the last word from Mr. Brown.
I think for our managers and for our leaders, it's been a great example as to how to make every second, every minute count of your interaction with your employees, with your customers. Think very carefully about it, because you're not just sitting in a room for an hour having a coffee, blah, 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 blah. So make every minute count, be the message, lead by example, and just have fun.
Awesome, guys. That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.